Hi, it's time for another Mail Call Monday. And as promised, today we've got a pile of stuff. I've got 4 different boxes. One of them I know what it is, and the other ones, well, this one I have an idea what it is, and these other 2, not exactly sure. So let's get to it. Let's start with the big one first because I think that would be the best way to go. Okay, so this first big one here, this comes from a fellow named Joe in Ontario, Canada. All the contents of this box actually came from another authorized NuTone service center that used to be in Ontario. And the owner retired. Joe acquired all of the leftover bits and pieces that a service center kind of guys tend to collect. And Joe's working really hard to try to find a home for everything and not just throw it away and put it in the dumpster or something like that. So he thought it was things that I could probably use. So let's go ahead and open it up and see what we got from Joe in Ontario. So we've got some bubble wrap and a bunch of newspaper advertisements. It's too bad it's not a regular, it's all advertisements it looks like. It's too bad it's not like the Ontario Press or something, because it would be fun to see what goes on in Ontario. So, the end of a NuTone parts box. And looks like we've got a wire nut resistor and capacitor pack. Not sure what that's for. It's not a number I recognize. And then we've got some more bubble wrap. Yes, I get to throw everything on the floor, but I do clean it up before everyone else shows up so I don't get any nasty looks. And then we've got a bunch of things wrapped up in bubble wrap. Got another wire nut resistor and capacitor pack. More things, another one, and 2 boxes. So you can tell it's older stuff because it says NuTone by Scoville. Scoville was a division of Hamilton Beach, and Hamilton Beach bought NuTone from the founder, Mr. Corbett. I think it was in the mid or late 60s. I think it was the mid 60s. And it got absorbed into Hamilton Beach, and that was the start of the best of times for NuTone because Hamilton Beach was a good progressive manufacturing company, and a lot of the things that happened after they bought them were very positive. So you can tell these are older items because they say Scoville on it. So let's go ahead and get this out of the way. I think we'll use these as our platform here, and let's take a look and see what Joe sent us. Let's go ahead and start with this one. We're going to use some scissors here because we don't want to damage anything. These look like a lot of them are circuit boards, and we don't want to use the knife because we might damage something. And here we have some crusty bubble wrap, but we have an amplifier board out of a 478 apartment house amplifier, and this looks like it's probably been around for a while. It looks like, is there a code date? I don't see a code date on it in particular, but you can tell it's an earlier board because the circuit board material is sort of the medium tan color. And you can see there's a lot of heat marks on the board from where it's been in use for a long time. If you turn it over and look on the back, you can see this area right here. It's kind of dark. And it looks like there's been some hand soldering done on this. So this might just be a used board, or it might be a module that was a factory replacement and it had been rebuilt at some point. Hard to say exactly. Next up is this one, and a little peek under the skirt there, and I think this is going to be the same thing. Another 478 amplifier board. This one's probably a little newer. It has a date code on it of 1983 or 84. It's got sort of 2 date stamps on it. So it's hard to know why that is. Again, could be a rebuilt module, or it could just be a used board that's been repaired. And let's do this one, because I think this is going to be probably the same thing. And it is another 478 board. This one actually has a date code of 1976 on it. The 478 system came out in, I think it was 75 or 76. It replaced the 477 model. And so this is a really early board. And again, it shows signs of use, but these are a fairly straightforward board. And these are actually nice to have because NuTone made these all the way from, let's say, 1975 all the way through about 2005, so it's about 30 years. And there's a lot of these in the world, and having spares is good. When you have enough spares, you can actually rebuild them ahead of time, and then sometimes when people are in a hurry, dealing with apartment house intercom systems, it's about as close as we ever get to an emergency around here. The way you kind of have to look at it is, you know, if you've got a 40-unit apartment building, you've got a small village there of maybe 60 or 80 people, and when the intercom system goes down, you don't want the villagers getting upset at the manager, because that's when the torches and pitchforks start to come out, and it's like that scene out of the Frankenstein movie. So getting things turned around quickly is important. So these are always handy to have. Let's see what else we've got. So we've got a little one here. And this is interesting. This is a Chime interface board for a NuTone intercom system. I'm not going to tell you which one yet, because I know what it's for. And this likely is a brand new part. It hasn't been used, and you can tell if you look at the ends of the stripped wires here and here, you can see how they're straight and even, like they were clipped off new. That sort of shows you that this hasn't been used, because if you were to terminate these, you would bend them over into hooks and put them under screws. So this is most likely a brand new part. This is a rather obscure part because it goes to a rather obscure intercom system. And I have a feeling that this one might be the same thing. And it is. So we have, get off there. Alright, so we have a pair of Chime interface boards. One there, one there. Fairly rare part. Even a fairly rare part back in its day. So if we look at the second one, you can see the difference. So if we look at the little orange wire right here, you can see how it's bent over. That's because this one has been used at some point, and someone bent the wires over into hooks and put them under screws and used it. So it's not that would be a bad thing necessarily. Maybe some service guy like me used it for testing on a system or some other thing, or maybe it was a shop board they used when they were working on that model of intercom, and it's a handy thing to have, so that's good. And since I know what these are, I have a good idea what these are going to be. Let's go ahead and we'll open up both of these. And these are your sort of, oh wait, that's boring. Look, it's ivory plastic boxes. But actually it's not, because if you open them up, if I can remember how, like this, these are termination blocks. And these go with the same system that these go with. And so the way this would be used, let's see what we've got in this one. See, these are original. They even have the mounting hardware. And I think the mounting hardware, we might as well open it up here and see. We don't want to tear the envelope, we want to take the staple out. So what we've got here are a bunch of little plastic standoffs and some screws, and the system that this goes with is a system that can be loop wired. So loop wired means that you can literally start with one cable, which would have, in this case, 8 wires in it. And the reason you know it's 8 wires is because on the terminal block here, it's labeled as blue, white, blue, red, white, red, orange, white, orange, black, white, black. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wires. So it's an 8-wire system. And because it's loop wired, so loop wire means you start with an 8-conductor cable, you start at the beginning of the system, and then it goes to the first remote speaker, and the next remote speaker, and the next remote speaker. So you have multiple speakers on the same cable run. And this would have been used as a hub or star point for the wiring, where you would bring in one 8-conductor cable into the terminal block here and terminate them, and then you can wire off other 8-wire cables to other stations. So it's a star point or a hub of wiring, and most installers never would use this. It makes it actually, while it seems like a really good idea, it actually in some ways makes it more complex to wire a house with something like this and to find a place to put it and stuff like that. But it's still an interesting bit of NuTone history here. So let's put those aside, and let's see what we've got in the box. Alright, so we've got our 2 boxes left. Let's do this one first. This one actually says 478 on it, which would kind of fit in with our 3 478 amplifier boards. See, this is a genuine NuTone box. You can see on the end here, this is a stamp they used to use. So we've got, it says original part number, it's a 7001A000, and then exchange number is an 8554A000, and then it says contains number 7001A, and that's the way they used to do it back in the day. If we open this up, we've got some newspaper in the bottom. Keep the box. Let's see when the newspaper's from. Pretty crusty, pretty yellowed. Oh, look at that. Says New York Times, March, can you see that? New York Times, March 30th, 1986. How's that for vintage? See what was happening. 2 Zunis killed in South African violence. That's not good. Alright, so much for the newspaper. So what we have here is, we have a NuTone 478 amplifier case with a terminal board. Oh, look. And there's goodness inside of it. What a surprise. It's like a NuTone piñata. So there's no, let's dump this out. There's no circuit board in there. It's just the case and the terminal board here on the front. But you could easily take one of these and install it in here and make yourself a working 478 amplifier. So that's pretty cool, like that. And then we've got, oh, I know what these are. That was cool the way he packed them inside. These are timer modules for the 478. And these are old timer modules. So let's open these up. I like the little boxes. Yeah, these are like vintagey vintage NuTone. See, they don't do this so much. It's wrapped up in paper. Oh, this one's actually a little newer. I'll show you how you can tell. And And that one's a little newer too. So let's look at what we've got. So what we've got here are 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we've got 4 of these. These are model 467 door timer modules for the 478 amplifier. And if you add this into a 478, you get a timed door release unlock as compared to the tenant having to move the switch and hold it to keep it energized. These are also required if you have a postal lock on your system, so the mailman can let himself into the lobby with his special postal key. It unlocks the door so he can do that. So these are of different vintage. We'll do these two because this is the early one. And the early ones, so the adjustment pot is this and the blue thumb wheel here. So the early modules like this one, they have a different kind of pot and they have this blue plastic stem on it. And this lines up with the opening in the case right here. So you could easily reach in there with a small screwdriver. I think it takes a screwdriver. I don't think it sticks out. It might stick out. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe it does stick out a little bit. But it makes it easier to adjust like that. They did away with that at some point and just went to a standard thumb wheel pot with a slot in it for a screwdriver, probably because this was less expensive to manufacture. So the 467s are main door and postal timer modules, and these two, these are 468s, again early and later, and 468s are second door timer modules. So if you have a building with 2 entries, two entry doors, 2 lobbies or something like that, you need this to have a timeout and be able to activate the second door, because the second door is not part of the system unless you add a module into it to allow it to be enabled. So this is a good surprise. These kind of modules, these are infinitely repairable. There isn't really very much on here. You've got an SCR which controls energizing the door strike. There's a 555 timer. You've got a couple diodes, couple capacitors, 1 transistor. The pot is probably the hardest, would be on an early one like this, it would be the hardest piece to replace because it physically has to mount onto the board correctly, but it's not that critical, so it wouldn't be too terribly difficult to retrofit a more modern one. And the thing I like on this a lot is this little blue thing right here. This is an old school tantalum capacitor, and I don't think they used those later on. Or maybe they did. Yeah. This one's got one here. It's a yellow tantalum. Tantalums are good. They're very stable capacitors, but they have a problem. If for some reason something goes wrong in the circuit and the voltage is reversed through the capacitor, they have this really nasty tendency to basically explode. And so you got to be aware of that. But the timer modules are a cool thing to have. So let's put those aside. Can never have enough timer modules. And now let's see what the last one is. So the last one, we have a clue, because here on the end it says I600. And so I know what an I600 is, but I bet most of you don't. Let's go ahead and open it up. And out it comes. And we've got some documentation, some crusty foam in the bottom. No newspaper this time though. The newspaper is kind of cool. And what we have here is, well, you're thinking, oh, that's another amplifier box, isn't it? Just like the 478? Not exactly. It is roughly the same. I think the bottom part is the same, and I think the cover is the same, but no terminal board here. But if we take it apart, has an access hole here with a big rubber grommet where your wiring can go in. If we take the cover off, we have all kinds of exciting stuff inside. So this is from an i600 system, and this is the control module and power supply for the i600. And most people have never seen or don't know what an i600 is, and it was the first solid state selective call NuTone intercom system that they ever made. There was another selective call model that they made. It was sometime back in the late 50s or really early 60s, and it was designed to be really like an office paging intercom system, but it was not fully electronic or solid state. It required big giant trunk cables full of, I don't remember how many pairs there are. I think there's like 40 pairs, like a 40 pair cable or something like that. So it's not really in the same class as this, but that was, and it was not very successful as I understand. I've only ever seen a brochure on one sometime a long time ago, and couldn't even find anybody at NuTone that really knew anything about it, because I don't think they made it for very long. But this is the first one, and this goes, or this, the chime interface module goes with this, so you could hook an externally mounted NuTone electronic chime through the intercom system, and the terminal blocks go with this also. And so we're missing something here to make a system. Oh wait, I know what it is. It's one of these. This is an i614, and this is a selective call NuTone intercom station that goes with all of this. So not enough time to go into this today because this is fairly complicated, but this will be a topic of an upcoming video. Put that over there. And I've been looking for one of these. These are about as rare can get. This is a mid and late 70s intercom system. It was very expensive back in the day. It was a very special application type of model, not something most people would ever put in their homes. It was really targeted more towards small businesses or dental offices or doctor's offices or things like that. It's very complicated in its design, and I don't know exactly how successful it was, but I've got the hub of it now. I've got the most important piece. These are really hard to come by, and this is a good find. So I appreciate Joe in Ontario sending me all this stuff. This is all really cool and all a really good find. So unfortunately, I'm out of time this morning to do any of the other boxes. This took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. So we're going to have to save the other 3 boxes for the next one. Maybe I'll do a quick video on those later on this week. But for today, that's the end of mail call, because Joe sent so much goodness here that it just took a long time to do it. And I've got to get the mess cleaned up off the floor before everybody gets here. So big thumbs up to Joe. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up on it, because that always helps. I hope you found it interesting. That's all for today. See you on the next video. Oh, i600 system video coming soon. As soon as I have enough time to put it together to show you how it works. Anyway, see ya.